Introduction. In a brief respite, he has regained a portion of his strength, sufficient for a decisive confrontation. Having been discovered, there is no recourse. Kun Tian raises his gaze. Sensing three distinct auras encroaching from various directions, he has been ensnared and surrounded. This outcome is indeed anticipated. To flee further would deplete his stamina and potentially jeopardize his physical foundation thus. This battle presents the most opportune moment, as it is likely the peak of his restored capabilities. Opportunities of this nature may not arise again. One must resolve matters with a single confrontation. With a flicker of his consciousness, Kun Tian conjures an ethereal mist within the grove, manifesting myriad phantoms, swarms of insects, and countless figures of diverse appearance. Chapter 1. Poisoned. In the free trade city-state of Bravos, Louis awakens, groggy, with a bitter taste of medicine lingering in his mouth. Pain, pain, pain. Attempting to move, he finds his body heavy with soreness, breath labored, and limbs weak. This sensation evokes a haunting memory from his childhood, reminiscent of a time when he was bitten by a snake. I have been poisoned. What transpired? Was I not engaged in a military competition at the club? Who was the scoundrel that dared to poison me? Struggling to open his eyes, the weight of thick eye discharge makes his eyelids ache. He finds himself in a dim, stony chamber, adorned with crude wooden furnishings, exuding a strong medieval ambience. As confusion envelopes him, a torrent of foreign memories surges forth, playing out in his mind like a cinematic reel. I have inexplicably traversed into the realm of a song of ice and fire. Louis Derry, aged 19, is the adopted son of the late Sir William Derry, raised in Bravos, groomed over the years as the heir, and rigorously trained in various martial arts. Just a week prior, the venerable knight passed away, leaving behind a residence marked by its red door. In his final moments, the gray-haired elder implored Louis to safeguard the Targaryen siblings. These siblings are the last surviving heirs loyal to the royal family. However, it is evident that Louis Derry has failed in his duty, as within the narrative of A Song of Ice and Fire, the siblings were swiftly expelled from the estate by the servants after the elder's demise. Given the circumstances of suspected poisoning, it is clear that in the original timeline, I must have perished, likely at the hands of the very servants within the house. What are you planning to do? Suddenly, a fierce argument erupts outside the door. In such haste, do they not even wish to wait for my demise? With great effort, Louis struggles to rise. Whether due to the effects of his transmigration, he feels a slight resurgence of vitality within him. Let not be a fleeting resurgence. Grasping the longsword beside his bed, Louis forcefully pushes open the door. The clamor ceases instantaneously as the onlookers in the courtyard turn in astonishment towards Louis. Two men, clad as servants, release the disheveled garments from the silver-haired youth. In his recollections, one is a cook and the other stable hand. Scattered across the floor lies a heap of clothing. The two individuals did not intend to engage in any peculiar actions towards the handsome youth. Rather, their objective was to expel him from the premises. The young man retreated a couple of steps, shielding his younger sister beside him. The small girl, with silvery golden hair, appeared to be around 8 years old, her violet eyes brimming with tears. They were siblings, Viserys Targaryen and his sister Daenerys Targaryen. Their joyful faces flushed with excitement. Louis Derry had not perished. Louis struggled to straighten his posture as he unsheathed his sword. The expressions of the cook and the stableman were akin to those who had seen a ghost. They could not fathom how someone who had been poisoned could still stand. The cook, trembling, stammered, "My lord, you are still alive. Get out." "Yes, sir." Louis endeavored to keep his voice steady, lest they perceive his inner turmoil. Though they had the audacity to poison him, they lacked the courage to confront a sword-wielding knight, even if that knight appeared weak. They had witnessed Louis practice swordsmanship. He could defeat them both over 10 times within a minute. The cook and the stableman fled in disarray towards the main door. Louis exhaled a sigh of relief in his current frail state. He had no confidence in vanquishing 2 robust men. However, before the servants could open the door, a loud bang echoed as the massive red door was forcefully kicked open from the outside. The stableman was struck on the nose by the door and collapsed to the ground. Louis frowned as he observed 5 burly men entering the premises. These individuals were clad in leather armor, emblazoned with a red axe on their chests, and carried daggers at their waists. They were local gang enforcers. The leader, a balding man with a face full of pockmarks and a fierce demeanor, bellowed upon entering, "Is the house vacant?" Upon seeing Louis brandishing his sword in the courtyard, the balding man seized the cook by the collar. "You wretched fool! Did you not claim to have poisoned him? What is the meaning of this?" The cook's lips quivered. Two truly added the poison you provided to the wine. Useless. The cook stumbled and fell to the ground. In the dark medieval era, the act of consuming a rival was all too common. The balding man glared menacingly at Lewis, drawing his dagger, while the four enforcers behind him similarly brandished their weapons. Hearing the gang openly discuss the act of poisoning, Lewis realized the situation had escalated beyond recovery. Their sinister plot to profit by taking a life had been exposed. They were now prepared to eliminate him to silence him, eradicating evidence and claiming the house-due birds with one stone. Did they think they could pay to avert disaster? Such a notion was utterly impossible. You all step aside. Instructing the Targaryen siblings to remain back, Lewis positioned his sword at a mid-level stance, the tip aimed squarely at the gang. Internally, he fervently called out, "System! System!" There was no response. "It was over. I have no system." As he surveyed the standoff, despair filled Viserys' heart. He had witnessed Lewis in a state of utter weakness and knew he was now merely clinging to the last vestiges of life. If Lewis were to fall, they would not survive either. The balding man sensed Lewis's pale complexion and understood the gravity of the situation. It appears the poison is effective, merely a wretched existence on the brink of demise. Brothers, advance. The gangsters surrounded Lewis from three sides. Having trained in martial arts for a decade in his previous life, this body had also undergone several years of training. In this moment, he could only rely on his exceptional swordsmanship to kill one of them, instilling enough fear to compel the gang to retreat, thus granting him a slender chance of survival. The thugs wielded their short swords and launched their assault with remarkable coordination. Lewis's mind raced, analyzing the vulnerabilities of his assailants. With heightened concentration, their movements appeared sluggish in his eyes. He discerned the trajectory of one assailant's sword. Stepping forward, he thrust his long sword, producing a crisp clang as he deflected the thug's short sword. Another step forward, he engaged his core, swiftly redirecting his arms, causing the long sword to spin gracefully. With the sound of slicing air, a brilliant flash cut through the thug's eyes, the blade gliding smoothly across both temples, transitioning from one side to the other. The thug collapsed to the ground, half of his skull sliding away. Clean. Swift. What a rapid sword. Both Baldy and Viserys thought simultaneously. Baldy was stunned, while the youth felt exhilarated. His hands trembled. He had aimed for the throat. His body felt weaker than after a lengthy battle with a girlfriend. A spurt of blood stained Lewis's chest. The intense exertion had rendered his already exhausted body incapable of suppressing the poison any longer. The scene fell into silence. Viserys' fleeting hope plummeting once more. Baldy glared fiercely at Lewis, refusing to show fear. They still intended to attack. They had miscalculated. These bloodthirsty gangsters were far more ruthless than anticipated. Baldy raised his short sword once more and charged. At this point, Lewis had exhausted his last ounce of strength. Is it possible that I will perish within 5 minutes of my arrival? Suddenly, a magnificent golden light illuminated Lewis's mind, revealing a staircase leading to infinite heights within the radiance. Time and space around him slowed. The first step of the staircase emanated a faint glow, upon which a passage of text appeared. Courage resides within the soul. Slay the wicked with your own hands to ascend the first step of the path to glory, unlocking the random character panel. Another burst of golden light flickered, freezing the image. The character panel from Mount Blade has been activated. Kill one enemy. Honor points 1. In his mind, he transformed into a faint golden figure, ascending another step. Honor paves the way through thorns. Having gained honor point for the first time, you're granted a random hero summoning opportunity. Will you use it? Lewis glanced quickly, unable to examine it thoroughly, and resolutely thought, use. The previously clear sky suddenly turned tumultuous. A fierce wind arose, dark clouds gathered, and thunder roared, resembling the apocalypse. A silver-white lightning bolt, as thick as a bowl, struck directly upon Baldy's gleaming head. Boom! A blinding flash accompanied by a deafening roar caused the onlookers to squint their eyes. As they regained their composure and reopened their eyes, they found that the bald man had vanished, leaving behind only a charred corpse and a glowing white orb that had rolled nearby. What is this? Have I summoned a sphere? The remaining thugs were struck with terror, bewildered by the unexpected lightning strike on such a bright day. Seizing the moment, Lewis meticulously examined his character panel. Name, Lewis. Strength. 18. Strength signifies the entirety of muscular development within a body. Agility. 15. An enhancement in agility corresponds to the efficiency of the nervous system. Constitution. 15. The fortification of constitution comprehensively bolsters the endocrine and immune systems. Intelligence. 12. Intelligence enhances the brain's computational and memory capabilities. It does not equate to strategy or wisdom. Charm. 19. Indeed, you are quite the handsome figure. Honor points. 1. These can be used to strengthen attributes. Strengthening the endocrine system can aid in detoxification, and he hurriedly began to increase his constitution. Let's boost it. A wave of warmth surged from within his core. Lewis instantly felt his breath ease. His waist no longer ached, his legs no longer trembled, and his body felt invigorated. He was restored. Chapter 2. The exiles in without granting the henchman a moment to react. Lewis, having regained his strength, unleashed the Meyer-style swordsmanship, colloquially known as the helicopter blade. The long sword danced fluidly, shifting direction with each step, its silver glint shimmering as a fierce wind howled around him. With each inch of blade length came an increase in might. His 18 points of strength approached nearly double that of an average man. In an unexpected turn of events, 2 henchmen fell lifelessly, one with a severed throat and the other cleaved in 2 at the skull. The sole survivor, thoroughly shattered, could scarcely comprehend the ferocity displayed by a man he perceived as a mere shadow of himself, a poisoned wretch, no less. Without a second thought, the henchman turned to flee. Vaserus watched, his blood pressure surging, hands trembling with excitement. The previously arrogant bald thug had been struck down as if by a bolt of divine retribution, while Lewis, who had moments ago been on the brink of death, now carved a path of destruction. The youth, still inexperienced and naive, could only think how exhilarating it felt. Emboldened by the thrill of the moment, Vaserus seized a bench from the courtyard and hurled it at the fleeing henchman. It landed squarely at the henchman's feet, causing him to stumble painfully as he twisted his ankle. Lewis raised his long sword and hurled it with precision, the blade piercing deeply into the henchman's back. The tip emerged from his chest, and he gasped, blood gushing forth as he muttered incoherently. With one final, agonized sigh, the man collapsed, devoid of breath. In his mind, a panel appeared, indicating an increase of 3 honor points, a reward for slaying an enemy. Surely, this panel was a manifestation of some divine retribution. Lewis allocated his points to bolster his strength, now possessing 21 points, which made his muscles feel as though they were swelling with newfound vigor. The sound of his bones cracking resounded, akin to a relentless massage, invigorating him as he reveled in the sensation of possessing twice the strength of an ordinary man. Meanwhile, the stableman had seized the chaos to flee through the main door, while the chef lay prostrate on the ground, weeping profusely and trembling in supplication. "My lord, spare me. I was coerced," he pleaded. Lewis approached the chef, who knelt before him, repeatedly bowing in submission. "Which faction were you colluding with?" Lewis had no intention of hearing excuses. Regardless of the circumstances, the act of poisoning was an established truth. "The Dagger Guild," he stammered. "What treachery does your Dagger Guild conceal?" The Dagger Guild held considerable power in Bravos, performing unsavory deeds for influential merchants, with hundreds of henchmen merely scraping by. The guild's upper echelons even included a master swordsman, the Water Dancer, a foe far beyond Lewis's current capabilities. Realizing the gravity of the situation, with the stableman having fled, it wouldn't be long before the Dagger Guild received word of the incident. What was to be done? Utilizing the identity of the Targaryen siblings, the last heirs of royalty, Lewis contemplated seeking protection from the ruler of Bravos, the Sea Lord. While the two might escape unscathed, he, a mere pawn, would undoubtedly meet a grim fate, pierced by a crossbow bolt on the streets. He must leave Bravos at once. Where to turn next? Lewis recalled the original narrative, where the Targaryen siblings, after being cast out from their home, embarked on a journey of wandering. Years later, in the free trade city-state of Pentos, a governor offered refuge to them for his own gain. The sister, Daenerys, even received a dragon egg. So, they must go to Pentos. Why must the brother and sister accompany them? This also reflects Lewis's ambition. There exists a novel recounting a historical episode about wielding the emperor's authority to command the lords. Although the Targaryen emperor possesses far less influence than Emperor Xian of Han, he is still better than none. In the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, titles and oaths hold significant weight. Contemplating this, Lewis gazed at the chef before him, hesitating momentarily. Then, with 2 swift punches, he struck the chef's temple. The chef's skull caved in instantly, his eyes bulging, blood streaming from his orifices as he collapsed to the ground, convulsing before succumbing to death. No honor points were awarded. It seems that killing an unarmed civilian does not yield rewards. How splendid. This alleviates the concern of potentially becoming a deranged murderer in the future. Lewis drew the long sword from the corpse, wiped it clean, and sheathed it. With essential items in hand, we must hasten our departure from Bravos. The silver-haired youth nodded obediently, rushing back to gather his belongings. At this moment, Viserys was merely a child in his early teens, quite close to Lewis Derry, instinctively following his commands. Moreover, with a courtyard strewn with corpses, no one wished to linger. Lewis swiftly approached the charred corpse, stooping to pick up a white stone, examining it with curiosity. The stone, the size of a walnut, emitted a faint glow, resembling a moon-white pearl. In his mind, a panel displayed golden text, "Dragon egg, hatching." What? A dragon egg? Lewis was filled with excitement, holding it up to the sun for inspection, yet the moon-white shell was opaque, revealing nothing. This dragon seems a bit shy, slightly disappointed. Lewis carefully stored the dragon egg close to his person and turned to don armor in the old lord's room, his resolve gradually solidifying. An incubating dragon egg. This is my capital for seizing dominion over the world. Viserys led his sister, gathering valuable possessions and packing their belongings, arriving at the door. At this moment, Lewis had also donned the armor left by the old lord, a full suit adorned with intricate engravings, the once gilded designs now worn away. The old lord had been the chief instructor of the royal castle's guards, making such fine armor unsurprising. Daenerys was too small, so Lewis hoisted her up, her chubby little arms wrapping tightly around his neck. The group turned to glance back at the red door before hastily departing. Lewis pushed aside a drunken man blocking their path and gazed towards the dock of old clothes merchants, a wave of briny sea air hitting him. The place was filthy and noisy, a chaotic mix of laborers, drunks, beggars, and prostitutes. The dock was crowded with ships from various lands, and finding a vessel bound for Pentos would not be easy. Relying on his memory, Lewis guided the two children to the Exiles Inn, a place where he often sneaked away for a bit of merriment. The inn is situated by the shore, ingeniously converted from an old merchant ship, exuding a unique charm, with the cabins serving as guest rooms and the deck transformed into a bar. As we ascended the gangplank to the deck, a nauseating stench assailed our nostrils, leaving me puzzled as to why Lewis Derry frequented such a place. Along the sides of the deck were numerous wooden tables, filled with inebriated sailors and mercenaries, while a few tavern maids weaved through the crowd. "Hey, that bag is yours, isn't it?" slurred a toothless mercenary, reaching for Viserys's satchel, emboldened by drink. The siblings had donned simple burlap garments while fleeing, yet the fabric of their luggage was too fine, arousing the man's dubious intentions. Lewis cast a cold glance at the mercenary, lifting a corner of his cloak to reveal his plate armor and sword. The mercenary retracted his hand, cowed, and turned to vent his frustration at a serving maid. "I want beef. Get the damned food out here." Lewis had initially considered hiring some assistants, but upon observing the disheveled lot before him, he swiftly abandoned the notion. Employing such individuals would surely invite trouble. The captain's quarters had been repurposed into a bar, presided over by a young woman with a small burn scar on her arm, her chestnut curls wrapped in a headscarf, her figure ample and inviting. "I wish to purchase a ticket," Lewis declared. Rita looked up, her gaze softening upon recognizing him, and a sultry smile graced her lips. "My dear Lewis, it has been far too long. I have been restless these past few nights, pining for you, my beloved Lewis." The proprietress was once Lewis Derry's lover, and thus, he deemed her somewhat trustworthy. A shiver coursed through him as he diverted his gaze from her bosom, his tone growing serious. "This concerns my life. I must leave Bravos immediately." Sensing the gravity in his voice, Rita's smile faded, and she stood from behind the bar, pushing open the wooden door leading to the captain's quarters. "Come with me." Lewis and his companions hurriedly followed her into the dimly lit captain's quarters, cluttered with barrels of alcohol. In his haste, Viserys accidentally kicked over an empty bottle, which clattered and rolled away. Rita guided Lewis through the room to the aft deck, where she grasped a thick rope ladder affixed to the ship's side and nimbly descended. Lewis followed closely, gripping the railing, leaning over the ship's edge to see a small boat waiting below, with the proprietress beckoning him. Chapter 3. The Escape. Lewis climbed down the rope ladder, with Viserys closely trailing behind. Once aboard the small vessel, he gently set down Daenerys, who obediently curled up in a small ball, seeking a spot to sit. Rita urged Lewis to assist in rowing, and as the boat drifted several meters away, she cautiously inquired, "Whom have you offended, and where do you wish to go?" Lewis pondered briefly, ultimately deciding to speak candidly. "It is the Shortblade Brotherhood. I killed 5 of them. Help me find a ship to Pentos." Rita nodded, rowing with determination, her silence lingering for a moment. "Can you take me with you?" Lewis hesitated, glancing at the 2 Targaryen children. In the heat of battle, he was uncertain of his ability to safeguard more lives. Locking eyes with Rita, he shook his head. With a long sigh, The female proprietor expressed her discontent. To the west, I spotted the captain I was acquainted with. The small vessel made its way toward the deep-water dock. Louis, carrying Daenerys, ascended the ship's rope ladder. It was a medium-sized cargo ship. On the deck, dock workers were busy loading and unloading goods, while a few sailors regarded Louis with unfriendly glares. Those who lurk in shadows often bring trouble. What kind of trouble had these men stirred? Given the potential risks, I expect an increase in my payment. The ship's captain, sporting a thick beard and clad in a sleeveless vest typical of sailors, was engaged in a negotiation with the female proprietor. Just as the captain gestured to indicate a sum, he was abruptly interrupted by Rita. "Captain Bonnie, shut your trap and spare me your tricks. Do not inquire about what is not your concern. Safely deliver them to Pintos, and upon your return, I shall pay you triple." The captain's eyes widened in astonishment. 10 gold pieces. When did you become so generous? What connection do you have with this lad? Upon hearing the mention of 10 gold coins, Louis felt a pang of anguish. The entirety of the old lord's inheritance amounted to merely 33 gold coins. Nevertheless, he was prepared to reach for his purse, only to be halted by Rita, who shook her head. "The captain must ensure your safe passage to Pintos before he receives any payment from me." Recognizing her understanding of the local customs, Louis acquiesced, though he anticipated the significance Rita placed on his well-being. Once the price was settled, Rita turned back to smooth the wrinkles of Louis's cloak, whispering softly in his ear, "Take care." She gazed intently into Louis's eyes, etching his visage into her memory, then departed the ship without a backward glance, leaving Louis's cloak dotted with water stains. What a misfortune! I had accrued a debt of gratitude that would be difficult to repay. Observing the pair, the captain clicked his tongue. Rita, owning an inn, was a modestly successful businesswoman. This lad, despite his handsomeness, seemed to possess no remarkable qualities that warranted such devotion from Rita. Once Rita's figure had vanished, the captain gestured toward the ship's interior, his tone tinged with envy. "Follow me. There is a concealed cabin within." Under the captain's guidance, Louis led the Targaryen siblings into the ship's hold. Unbeknownst to them, a small beggar from the dock peeked curiously at the deck, and upon seeing Louis and the others enter the cabin, he quickly rose and disappeared into the depths of the alley. The hidden cabin was dark and damp, filled with the musty scent of rotting wood. The cramped space contained only a single bed strewn with straw, and a candelabra hung on the wall, casting a dim glow. Viserys looked disdainfully at the wooden bed, retrieving a blanket from his pack to lay upon it. He and Daenerys curled up on the bed, hugging their knees. Louis noticed a palm-sized porthole on the wall, rusted shut. He pushed it open with difficulty to gaze outside. The captain, eager to make a profit, acted swiftly. The ship was gradually departing from the dock. The scenery outside shifted, revealing a colossal and magnificent statue, the Titan of Braavos. Braavos is a city built upon water, encircled by towering islands. With but a solitary natural strait allowing the passage of ocean-going vessels, the Colossus serves as the grand gateway to the harbor. Cargo ships gently glide between the Titan's colossal legs, departing from Braavos, and Louis exhales a sigh of relief. They are safe. He closes the porthole and turns around, discovering the siblings nestled together, emitting soft snores. They are still children, having endured half a day of flight, and now, feeling secure, they have succumbed to slumber. Louis leans against the porthole, resting his sword across his lap, slightly closing his eyes while remaining vigilant. The cargo ship sails for several hours as dusk approaches, when suddenly a cacophony of frantic shouts erupts. Louis grips his sword, rising to his feet, as the ship begins to sway violently, startling the Targaryen siblings from their dreams, their expressions betraying alarm. Louis steadies himself, pressing against the wooden door, straining to listen to the commotion outside. The booming voice of Captain resonates, urging his fellow pirates not to harm anyone, as he has already paid off the authorities above. They should come to enjoy some drink and rest, for peace brings prosperity. Then, a flurry of footsteps approaches, a multitude of figures emerging onto the deck. Pirates, how unfortunate indeed. Search the hold, and have everyone come up to the deck. The corridor outside echoes with footsteps, passing several concealed compartments before finally halting at the door, the number of individuals remaining uncertain. Louis clutches the hilt of his sword tightly, while Viserys covers his sister's mouth. "Is there anything amiss?" One voice inquires. "Nothing. It's empty down there, just cargo." The heavy footsteps gradually recede, and Louis breathes a sigh of relief, his palms now slick with perspiration. Suddenly, the footsteps cease. Wait, could there be a hidden door there? Draft it, Louis thinks, preparing to strike should the intruder draw near, ready to fight for survival. Captain's urgent voice booms again. "It's stowaways. This business has been reported to the authorities. I've paid them off. The heavy footsteps echo. Captain calls out loudly, seemingly anxious that Lewis might not hear. Brother, step back. I shall open the door. Fear not. I am acquainted with the people on the waterways. I assure your safety. Lewis hastily gestures for the siblings to hide beneath the bed and remain silent. Grabbing a blanket to obscure the gap, the wooden door swings open, revealing Captain's thick beard, with 3 pirates clad in leather armor standing in the corridor. The pirates, swords at the ready, eye Lewis with fierce scrutiny. Captain positions himself between the 2 factions, striving to mediate. Gentlemen, do not act rashly. This young lad has erred in Westeros, and I am providing him refuge. This is a lucrative venture, and success will yield significant profits for all involved. Upon hearing this, the pirates lower their weapons, urging Lewis to emerge and move to the deck. Lewis contemplates the situation. The cabin is cramped, offering no avenue for escape, while 2 children remain hidden beneath the bed. Engaging in combat at this moment would be unwise. Suppressing the urge to kill, he resolves to ascend to the deck and observe the unfolding events. Lewis stepped out of the cabin and forcefully shut the door behind him. One of the pirates shoved him roughly, barking, "What s with the attitude? Get up there." With a heart as serene as ice, he remained unperturbed by the impending chaos. On the deck, Captain's crew squatted obediently in a row, hands clasped over their heads, while over 20 pirates glared menacingly. 2 pirate ships flanked the merchant vessel, with several pirates atop wielding crossbows. Fortunately, his earlier impulse had been restrained. The pirate captain, clad in armor, approached Lewis, and Captain hurried to intercept him, reiterating his earlier protective words while producing a pouch of coins from his pocket. "It's merely a misunderstanding, just a little something to buy my brothers some drinks." The captain weighed the pouch in his hands, nodded in satisfaction, and tucked it away. It seemed this was merely a case of piracy, and they had narrowly avoided conflict. Just as Lewis exhaled in relief, an unexpected surge of adrenaline coursed through him, and a shiver ran down his spine. Out of the corner of his eye, he glimpsed the figure of a groom appearing on the pirate ship, and the captain slowly raised his right hand. Without a moment's hesitation, Lewis drew his sword and stepped forward, swift as lightning. The blade flashed, and the captain's head was cleaved in 2, a fountain of blood erupting and splattering across Captain's face. Chapter 4. The battle on the deck. Amid Captain's shrill cries, Lewis pressed on, his sword dancing through the air as he dispatched the pirates trailing behind him, 2 of whom fell lifelessly in an instant. The pirate who had shoved him earlier found both arms severed at the elbows. "Damn it, my arms!" he cried, collapsing in agony. Lewis swiftly ended his suffering with a horizontal swing, sending the grotesque head rolling. The surprise onslaught had claimed 4 lives before the pirates could react. Yet the true battle had only just begun. Captain lamented internally, "It's all over. Everything I've worked for over the past decade is in ruins." The sailors, hastily assisting Captain, retreated in a panic towards the cabin, cursing Lewis for his reckless bravado. How could this madman possibly contend with 2 ships of pirates? He might cost us our lives. The air whistled as arrows flew, and Lewis quickly dodged, a volley of arrows thudding into the ground behind him. Having evaded the attack, he raised his sword high and charged at the remaining pirates. Simultaneously, he activated his panel and allocated points. The 4 points of honor he had just acquired boosted his strength to 25, significantly enhancing his speed. As a pirate raised his curved blade, a flash of steel struck, the overwhelming force cleaving both man and weapon in half, spilling crimson innards onto the deck. Enraged by the mounting casualties, the pirates encircled Lewis, launching relentless assaults. Pirates, devoid of any chivalric code, preferred to gang up rather than engage in one-on-one combat. Though Lewis's swordsmanship was exceptional, he found it challenging to evade every strike. And though his old plate armor bore numerous dents, it held firm. In desperation, he abandoned defense, opting for an all-out offensive, transforming his precise swordplay into a wild, sweeping assault. The pirates were thrown into disarray, their limbs flailing, blood and flesh scattered across the ground. In a mere moment, a dozen corpses lay sprawled on the earth, while the remaining pirates, filled with dread, retreated in utter chaos. This turmoil resulted in Lewis sustaining several wounds. His plate armor was rent and curled, dark voids gaping from which blood flowed profusely, akin to a small stream. The sheer volume of blood loss indicated that arteries had been severed. Such brutality was unimaginable. The presence of armor-piercing projectiles was a grim reality. Yet, in this grim exchange, Lewis emerged victorious. Not only had the pirates lost their lives, but they had also relinquished precious honor points. Hearing the clamor of battle, the Targaryen siblings grew concerned for Lewis and could not restrain themselves from emerging to investigate. As they squeezed through the crowd of fleeing onlookers, they were met with a harrowing sight. Amidst the pile of corpses, Louis stood resolutely, his wounds grotesque, resembling a figure of blood. Young Daenerys, in her innocence, cried out in desperation, "Louis, please don't die." Capon shook his head. Louis was the most valiant knight he had ever witnessed, single-handedly facing numerous foes, yet such injuries were undoubtedly fatal. Viserys drew a dagger meant for meals. Intent on avenging Louis, though fear coursed through him, he thought, if it were his brother Rhaegar, he would undoubtedly act thus. After the death of the old lord, Louis was the only remaining kin to the siblings. Capon seized Viserys' wrist, urging, "Let us flee. There is a small boat at the ship's stern. We must not squander the sacrifice of our noble knight." "Who the hell wants a sacrifice?" Louis trembled in pain, feverishly selecting attributes, desperately clicking. In an instant, he expended 18 honor points, elevating his constitution to 34. His coagulation factors proliferated wildly, damaged blood vessels began to mend, and the torrential bleeding gradually subsided. His hematopoietic system surged as if powered by nuclear energy, organs and cells feverishly generating new blood to replenish his body. A surge of adrenaline coursed through him, and Louis instantly felt no pain, even experiencing an exhilarating rush, believing he could battle for 3 days and nights. To the astonishment of all, the seemingly dying Louis once again lifted his longsword, dispatching another pirate, invigorated as he relentlessly pursued the remaining foes. Captain Capon's eyes widened in disbelief. He had never witnessed such a spectacle in his lifetime at sea. The pirates, momentarily unable to grasp their predicament, were convinced their minds were playing tricks. The knight before them was not human, but some legendary beast. As a few arrows whistled through the air once more, Louis neither flinched nor evaded, allowing the projectiles to embed in his armor as he bent to seize a fallen iron axe, hurling it with force. With a sharp whoosh, the axe pierced the skull of a crossbowman, the body plummeting into the sea. The surviving pirates, bereft of any fighting spirit, scattered in panic, abandoning ship to leap into the water. Some sailors aboard the merchant vessel, witnessing the spectacle, shouted in exhilaration, knowing that they would have much to discuss in taverns in the days to come, though more fortunate was the opportunity to seize a small fortune. While Louis continued to hunt down the pirates, one sailor crouched beside a corpse, rummaging for valuables. As he lifted the leather armor, a few silver coins came into his grasp, and a smile began to form on his face, only to be abruptly replaced by a chill at his neck. The sailor's world began to spin, and his head rolled lifelessly to the ground. The water dancer, Carpin, let out a terrified scream, bewildered by the presence of these individuals. What wrongs had Louis committed to incur such wrath? It was only then that Louis noticed the unexpected arrival of 2 robed swordsmen on the deck. One wielded a swift blade and donned a feathered cap, while the other grasped a half-sword. The water dancers were elite swordsmen from Bravos, famed for their masters who could engage in combat atop the water without causing a single ripple. The two approached Louis with graceful and unhurried steps, their shoes unblemished by blood, revealing their status as exceptional members of the water dancers. We, who held disdain for participating in the ambush, were astonished to witness Louis standing firm against 10 adversaries, displaying remarkable swordsmanship that was truly awe-inspiring. The swordsman with the swift blade wore a smile, continuously praising Louis. "However, we were bound by our mission. Today, we must claim your head, so prepare yourself." Seeing even the master of the water dancers had been mobilized, Louis was perplexed as to why the Shortblade gang would orchestrate such a grand operation over 5 thugs. Breaking the arrow lodged in his plate armor, he helplessly inquired, "Before I die, I have a question." "Please, go ahead," came the reply. "Whom did I kill that warranted the mobilization of dozens of pirates and 2 masters of swordsmanship to hunt me down?" The 2 masters exchanged glances and replied, "Do you not know? You have murdered the only son of the Shortblade gang's boss." Upon hearing this, Louis recalled the bald man and cursed his misfortune. What madness was this? A gangster posing as a petty thug, engaging in acts of robbery and extortion. This clarified why the Shortblade gang had become so unhinged. It was a matter of life and death between him and them. With no more words to waste, Louis raised his longsword and launched an attack. His movements were swift, and his strikes fierce, as if he were wielding a helicopter, unleashing a flurry of dazzling lights. Yet, the swordsman in the cap moved as if treading on clouds, seemingly insubstantial, effortlessly evading the lethal arcs of Louis's blade. After dodging, he seized a fleeting opening, striking like a falcon, the swift blade precisely piercing the gaps in Louis's armor. A single strike drew forth a torrent of blood. Louis attempted to employ a strategy of trading wounds for life. Charging forward, But the water dancer evaded without hesitation, while the other seized the opportunity to launch a fierce assault, inflicting further injuries upon Lewis. Time and again, this cycle repeated. Damn it, they are toying with me. Lewis lamented, his body marred by numerous wounds, blood gushing forth, his armor in tatters, resembling mere scrap iron. The water dancers were secretly astonished. Despite the multitude of injuries, each strike was lethal, and the blood spilled could easily fill a bowl. Yet the man before them remained undying. Unable to match the water dancer's speed, the remaining points of honor he had could only enhance his abilities, but it was insufficient to bridge the widening gap. Lewis realized that if he continued to languish in this manner, defeat was inevitable. Resolute, he decided that rather than succumb to a slow death, he would fight with all his might. Sensing the wind's direction, he adjusted his position, tearing off his tattered cloak. The cloak billowed dramatically, casting a veil over the approaching water dancer and obstructing his line of sight. Seizing the opportunity, Lewis fiercely slashed his long sword across his own neck, severing the carotid artery, and a torrent of warm blood sprayed onto the water dancer before him, inflicting a profound psychological blow. The water dancer stood in stunned disbelief. In the clash of masters, the difference often lies in the minutiae. A fleeting moment of distraction can determine life and death. With a swift motion, Lewis reversed the grip of his sword, and this time cut through the water dancer's throat. With a resounding clang, the swift blade fell to the ground, and the small-hatted water dancer clutched her neck and collapsed silently, succumbing to death. Gaining a modicum of honor, Lewis hastily allocated all his remaining points to bolster his constitution, attempting to suppress his injuries. Yet, the wounds were grievously severe, refusing to close completely. His fat burned away rapidly, leaving Lewis significantly emaciated, with the energy required for blood production nearly exhausted. Suffering from substantial blood loss, he felt dizzy and weak, relying on his sword for support as he gasped for breath. The Long family siblings cried out in alarm as the water dancer, wielding a half-sword, approached slowly. Chapter 6. The Dragon Maiden of the Dawn. The Targaryen siblings watched with great anxiety. Having single-handedly battled dozens of pirates, they believed Lewis was destined for victory. Yet the sudden appearance of the water dancer cruelly disrupted the status quo. The water dancer gazed at her fallen comrade, exclaiming her astonishment at encountering such a formidable adversary. Did you employ blood magic from the Shadowlands? Lewis opened his mouth to respond, but lacked the strength to utter a sound. You are a wretched creature. In your next life, I shall cleave you into 18 pieces, he would have said, for he was that kind of person. Even in death, his tongue remained sharp. Very well, I shall send you on your way, and then I can return to report. The water dancer aimed her sword at Lewis's heart, applying pressure. Yet it felt as though she had struck solid stone, unable to penetrate. Suddenly, a radiant white light blossomed from Lewis's chest, illuminating the entire deck, akin to a moon rising from the ground, causing everyone to squint. With a crisp crack, reminiscent of breaking eggshells, a petite, translucent white hand emerged from the moonlight, its delicate fingers pushing against the sword's tip, gradually nudging it away. As the moonlight dissipated into sparkling motes, a young girl with white hair, appearing around 10 years old, materialized before Lewis. Her countenance was stern, her presence extraordinary, and her eyes flickered with the light of thunder. She donned a miniature suit of silver grayscale armor. The girl parted her lips slightly. Her youthful voice resonated within the minds of all present, deafeningly powerful. I am the beloved daughter of the Dragon Emperor, the master of the tempestuous winds, the sentinel of Chanyuan, the governor of the Northly province, and the South Gao clan's princess, Miaoing. I have come in response to the summoning of the high-dimensional beings. Lewis was filled with overwhelming joy. Within the egg was indeed the legendary Miaoing. In the world of the old Warhammer, she was a renowned lord of the Dawn Empire, continually fighting on the front lines against the chaotic demons, a true demigod. However, gazing at the white-haired girl before him, he struggled to reconcile her with the memory of the Dragon Emperor's daughter. The water dancer, drenched in sweat, veins bulging, exerted all her strength but could not budge that single finger in the slightest. The gladiators of the arena could never withstand the thrust of a sword with mere fingers, and the water dancer even began to doubt her own senses, fearing she had unwittingly fallen into a hallucination and been ambushed, succumbing to a hallucinogenic drug. The onlookers, eyes wide in disbelief, were utterly baffled by the transformation occurring under the bright sun. Perhaps it was a manifestation of some mysterious magic from the east? With a crackle, the sound of electricity surged forth as Miaoing, her face set in concentration, channeled thunder through her fingertips, silver arcs of electricity coursing up the iron sword. The water dancer's muscles instantly tensed, her entire body trembling, hair standing on end, rolling her eyes back as her teeth clashed together, stifling a groan of anguish. This torment persisted for some time, until smoke began to rise from her form, a foul burnt odor permeating the air, prompting Miao Ying to cease her discharge. The body fell limply to the ground, excrement spilling forth. A chill swept through the crowd, causing them to shudder in unison. Miao Ying surveyed her own body with confusion. How could she feel so feeble, her form reduced to that of a child? Normally, she could easily reduce mortals to ash in an instant. Closing her eyes, she attuned herself to the state of her body. The effects of traversing worlds were far more severe than she had anticipated. With nearly all of the energy within her diminished, and her body metamorphosed back to that of her youthful self, a large hand rested atop Miao Ying's head, tousling her white hair, as Louis spoke in a weakened voice. Help, help. Miao Ying jolted awake, swiftly turning around to cast a resurrection spell upon Louis. A vibrant green glow enveloped him, gentle life energy washing over his wounds, as flesh began to knit and grow anew. In no time, the various holes in his body healed as if by a miracle. Louis had never felt so invigorated. Strength coursed through him as he looked toward the Dragon Maiden, ready to express his gratitude, but his brow furrowed slightly. Have you shrunk again? He observed, noting Miao Ying's form had diminished further, now appearing to be only around 8 years old. Miao Ying smoothed her disheveled hair, her expression grave. In this realm, the winds of magic are exceedingly thin. I had to draw upon some primal power to cast my spell. If I overexert myself, I may regress back to a dragon egg. There was an endearing quality to her childlike manner of speech that made Louis suppress the urge to ruffle her hair. He inquired, "Is there anything amiss with your body, Your Highness?" "There is no need for formality. You may simply call me Miao Ying. I am not gravely injured, but the restoration of my strength may require considerable time. During this period, my capacity for exertion is exceedingly limited." Louis regarded her claim of being extremely limited with skepticism. Even a dragon maiden who could only wield a fraction of her power was still among the pinnacle of existence in this low magic world of ice and fire. Furthermore, if there are any foodstuffs rich in magical energy, I may recover more swiftly. As she spoke, Miao Ying's stomach emitted a growl. Louis, observing the still serious countenance of the little dragon maiden, whose ears now bore a faint blush, struggled to contain his amusement. He called out to Captain Capon, quickly, "Have someone prepare some food for Her Highness, the dragon maiden." Captain nodded foolishly, overwhelmed by the profound impact of the day's events on his worldview. The existence of an immortal knight and a young girl wielding magic had transformed the legendary tales of taverns into a vivid reality. He gestured for the Still-Days sailors to hastily clear the battlefield and vacate this perilous place, while he himself hurried off to prepare food. The Targaryen siblings anxiously surrounded Louis. Daenerys cried out, "Louis, please don't die." Her tear-streaked face was marred by a runny nose. Louis patted her head and began to inspect his body. The armor left by the old knight was heavily damaged, nearing the point of uselessness, and the long sword in his hand was riddled with chips, on the brink of breaking. However, all his wounds had healed under the magic of the elusive shadow. "I'm fine. Stop crying. You'll ruin your pretty face. Go rest," he reassured her. The incessant sobbing of children could be quite bothersome. Viserys picked up the half-sword dropped by the water dancer, exclaiming in awe as he hurriedly handed it to Louis. "Look, Louis, it's a Valyrian steel sword." The half-sword gleamed with a cold metallic sheen, its blade a silvery black adorned with wave-like patterns. The hilt gilded and the pommel intricately sculpted into the shape of a dragon's head, a marvel of craftsmanship. Louis accepted the long sword, marveling at the wealth of bravos. The world's most opulent trading city, which allowed even a water dancer to possess such a precious Valyrian steel weapon. Valyrian steel is an exceedingly rare material. Weapons forged from it are exceptionally sharp, incredibly resilient, and possess unique powers, capable of slaying White Walkers as depicted in the original narrative. The secrets of its forging were lost with the fall of the Valyrian freehold, leading Louis to suspect that some form of magic was employed in its creation. He swung the long sword a few times. It felt smooth and effortless, filling him with immense satisfaction. Existing Valyrian steel swords are incredibly valuable and rare. This particular sword could command a knight's title in the 7 kingdoms across the sea. "My lord, come quickly. There is so much gold," Capon exclaimed, his face flushed with excitement as he sprinted over, his hands flailing joyfully. The sailors, while cleaning the battlefield, had uncovered a wealth of valuable goods from the 2 pirate ships, most notably a small iron chest. The lock had been smashed open by the sailors, revealing a trove of assorted coins within. Louis counted meticulously, discovering a total of 223 gold coins from various nations, along with over 1,000 silver coins. The currencies of the different realms held roughly equivalent values. Across the sea in Westeros, a gold dragon was worth approximately 200 silver stags, or over 10,000 copper coins. Lewis gathered the gold coins and turned to Cap N. You can keep the goods and silver coins. Distribute them as you see fit. The sailors erupted in cheers, shouting, "By the gods, bless you, my lord." This could be considered Lewis's compensation for them, as well as a means to silence any grievances. Though this battle was exceedingly perilous, Lewis reaped substantial rewards, not only augmenting his attributes by several points, but also acquiring a precious Valyrian steel sword and over 200 gold coins. More importantly, he hatched a demigod-level companion, the soaring dragon, Meowing. Although the dragon maiden currently appears somewhat lacking, the future is indeed promising. Chapter 5. The Haunted House. 3 days later, the merchant vessel gently glided into the bustling port of the trade city-state, Pentos. Situated on the western continent of Essos, Pentos rests within a natural bay by the narrow sea, gazing across the waters towards King's Landing on the continent of Westeros. Countless ships traverse the narrow sea daily for trade. Cap'n, beaming with joy, assisted Lewis and his companions with their luggage, carefully escorting them off the ship. His demeanor was remarkably improved compared to 3 days prior. Upon your return, please convey my gratitude to Rita. Should she require any assistance, she may reach out to me, Lewis requested. Cap'n promptly raised his hand, swearing by the name of the Maiden of the Moon, "I shall ensure your message is delivered. My ship will remain in Pentos for a week. Should you require anything, my Lord Knight, do not hesitate to seek me out." It seemed the shadows of the shipboard battle had left a profound mark on Cap'n, and tales of undead knights and magical maidens might soon proliferate in taverns. However, Lewis was indifferent, as the myriad of mysterious magical tales in this world would hardly affect him. The port of Pentos, much like Bravos, was chaotic and filthy, reeking of the sea. Observing the disordered throng, Lewis momentarily felt disoriented, yet he quickly regained his composure and contemplated his next steps. Gazing at the Targaryen siblings, he recalled from his past life the governor of Pentos, Illyrio, who had taken them in, using them as pawns for political ambition, casually trading them for gain. The root of this issue was the absence of a formidable armed force, rendering them susceptible to the whims of others. One must possess their own army to qualify for participation in the Game of Thrones. In the realm of Pentos, establishing a mercenary company stands as the optimal choice. For centuries, trade city-states have favored hiring vast numbers of mercenaries to engage in their mutual conflicts, giving rise to many legendary mercenary companies in the eastern continent. Among them, the Golden Company, founded by the noble bastard Harry Strickland, boasts a force of up to 10,000 warriors, including 500 elite knights, rivaling the military strength of great noble houses. To have the capacity to retaliate against the continent of Westeros, one must possess strength surpassing that of the Golden Company. As Lewis's thoughts wandered too far afield, he swiftly reined them in. Such ambitions felt distant. For now, he was accompanied only by 3 small companions, and his immediate concern was securing a place to stay. Real Estate Merchant Guild. I seek a property with a courtyard. The rotund realtor lounged lazily in an oak chair, glancing dismissively at Lewis's tattered cloak. Do you wish to buy or rent? Lewis produced a Pentosian gold coin, manipulating it in his hand as he uttered the most formidable words from his past life. Full payment. The agent sprang up from his chair, a radiant smile blooming upon his face. My Lord Knight, do take a look at this. He unfurled several scrolls of parchment across the table, adorned with exquisitely detailed illustrations of various properties, each worthy of an art exhibition. Quite impressive, Lewis mused inwardly as he meticulously examined the designs, his gaze settling upon a lavish red-walled mansion that overlooked the entire harbor district. How much for this estate? The agent's smile widened as he gestured with his fingers. 1,000 tower gold coins. Lewis furrowed his brow, astonished at the exorbitant prices of real estate in the Middle Ages. Is there anything more affordable? What about this residence near the governor's mansion? It's only 400 coins. Initially believing he had struck gold, Lewis could only exclaim inwardly at the steep costs. Just as he contemplated renting a modest abode, his peripheral vision caught sight of the dragon lady, meowing, munching on snacks, and a thought sparked in his mind. Lewis clapped his hands on the table, leaning closer to the corpulent agent with a grave tone. Do you have any ill-fated properties? Ill-fated? Yes, ones that are haunted, involved in murders, curses, or otherwise unsellable. The agent pondered for a moment, seemingly struck by a terrifying memory, and shivered involuntarily. Indeed, there is one, at the northeastern corner of the city, a secluded mansion. He continued, this is the Montoya family's villa. A member of their lineage has traditionally served as the governor of Pantos until 10 years ago when the main branch of the family vanished without a trace. Summoning his courage, the plump agent led Louis and his companions into the estate's grounds. The walls of the overgrown garden were entwined with rampant foliage, while the once beautiful grounds lay in neglect, overrun with thorns. In the center stood a marble fountain, its basin cluttered with decaying leaves. Beyond the fountain loomed a grand two-story villa built of white stone, resembling a miniature castle, with several elegant white columns gracing its entrance. Pausing before the door, Louis inquired curiously, with the main branch gone, shouldn't the collateral relatives be vying for the inheritance of this estate? How could it fall into such disrepair? The agent rummaged through a large bunch of keys from his pocket, searching carefully as he spoke. Anyone who inherits this mansion does not last long. They meet a grisly fate, with bodies found in a state most dreadful. He gestured toward the columns. In my youth, I witnessed a tragedy here. The male head of the household murdered his wife and children, then gouged out his own eyes before hanging himself right here. As Vasilis reached to touch the column, he recoiled in shock, hastily withdrawing his hand. Due to the numerous deaths, the Montoya family fell into decline. Countless merchants who took over the villa also met with misfortune, leading the governors to deem this place accursed, and thus it has remained abandoned. Vasilis felt a chill run down his spine and hastily urged Louis, a true dragon should not nest in perilous places. Let us depart swiftly. I would be willing to endure a smaller dwelling. Louis disregarded his concerns and quietly asked Miaoying, have you sensed anything? Miaoying nodded. There is a faint magical aura here, akin to a curse. Can it be resolved? It is of little consequence. Solitude can resolve it. Yet it would be prudent to conduct a thorough investigation first. Upon hearing this, Louis felt as though he had stumbled upon a remarkable opportunity. During the real estate conference, he had contemplated that this terrifying haunted mansion, which local residents found insurmountable, would merely be a trivial inconvenience for the dragon lady, Miaoying. Louis promptly decided to make the purchase and inquired of the portly agent. I have decided to buy. What is the price of this villa? The hefty agent, after much effort, located the key, held it in hand, and hesitated before advising. My lord, perhaps you should reconsider. This estate is truly malevolent. You are all still quite young, and it would be a waste of life. Louis took the key from the agent and opened the long-sealed door. A chilling wind swept forth, and under the blazing sun, everyone felt an icy shiver. Do not worry. Let us proceed with the contract. After paying 100 gold coins and signing his name, the luxurious villa with its expansive garden officially became Louis's possession. As Louis led the three children through the dilapidated threshold, the portly agent let out a deep sigh. Alas, yet another blinded by greed. Soon I shall have to send someone to collect their remains. It is a pity for the two lovely young girls, who, before they have truly begun to live, may perish due to the folly of others.